Yo, thanks for listening, downloading, and subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm 12 Kyle. Check it. On this podcast, we're going to take it back. We're going to take a look back at Jay-Z's second album, In My Lifetime, Volume 1, as this album turns 20 years old. Now, depending on who you ask, some say it's a great album, others say it's not so good. So we'll break that down. We'll also break down the tracks and Jay-Z as an MC, and I'll tell you why you should or shouldn't like this album. So sit back, relax, we'll drop the theme music, and we'll get the podcast jumping. Let's get it. Welcome back. As I mentioned at the top, we're talking about Jay-Z's second album, In My Lifetime, Volume 1. Now, this album dropped November 4th, 1997. As I say all the time, man, it's hard to believe that this album is turning 20 years old because I actually remember going to the store and copping this album. I think one of the things that was, very key about this album, you first have to begin to look at the landscape of what actually was going on in hip hop at the time that this album came out. Earlier that year, 1997, obviously the hip hop community lost Biggie Smalls. And, we found out much later that, Jay-Z and Biggie had a very close relationship. So Jay-Z was dealing with the loss of a friend, if you will. Hip hop had also, the previous year, lost the greatness of Tupac Shakur. So musically, the genre was kind of like in a holding pattern, if you will. But one thing that was happening was Bad Boy was taking over the charts. Puff earlier that summer had dropped No Way Out. And, with these 80s samples, he was definitely running the charts. Bad Boy was, on top. Death Row was still around, still dropping hits. And so, what we had a situation where, you had the shiny suit era, if you will, and then you had Death Row. And then, MCs had to kind of figure out where they were going to fit in musically. And, lo and behold, Jay-Z is coming out with his second album. One of the great things about this album, or at least leading up to this album, was the anticipation of the album. And this is where you'll see the difference if you look back in history, wherein Reasonable Doubt, Jay-Z's first album, came out and nobody knew who the hell Jay-Z was. But by the time Volume 1 comes out, Jay-Z is well known in hip hop, and he has an extreme buzz. So unlike Reasonable Doubt, which dropped to, nationally to very little fanfare, Volume 1 was, very, very highly anticipated. One of the most highly anticipated albums of the year. So, 1997 found hip hop in a weird space, but nonetheless, very much so, really anticipating this album. So, you had that going, and then Jay-Z was really trying to solidify himself, not only as an MC, but as a businessman, because, Jay's often said that, Volume 1 wasn't supposed to happen. His only album was supposed to be Reasonable Doubt, and he was supposed to step to the back and, kind of run Rockefeller with Dame Dash and Kareem Biggs Burke. That didn't happen. As we know, Jay-Z went on to release several albums after that. But yeah, that's what was going on in 97. So this album comes out, and again, it's very, very highly anticipated. Of course, this is the pre-internet era. So, there was there was somewhat of a rollout, but it wasn't like, you had to, you could download it on your phone. You had to do just like I did. You went to the record store, you bought it, And then, if you didn't buy it, your man bought it and you copped the dub off of him, and, you just kind of took it from there. But, understanding what was going on in 1997, we were really, really anticipating this album. And so the album comes out, it debuts at number 3 on the Billboard charts. So again, far contrast from what happened with Reasonable Doubt, which, when that debuted, I don't think, it even made a dent in Billboard. Nonetheless, this album goes on to go platinum. And so, so it's a success. The critics loved it. I think The Source gave it 4.5 mics. It was an album that, was very much so critically acclaimed. Because Jay-Z rhymed just about anything, any and everything in this album. But what he did was he really tried to set himself apart from the quote unquote jiggy style, that his Bad Boy counterparts were doing. Jay-Z really wanted to bring, a street album, or at least that's what we thought Jay-Z was going to bring to us, a street album when it dropped. So who produced this album? Obviously executive produced by Jay-Z and Dame Dash and Kareem Biggs Burke, because it was on Rockefeller. But it was also produced by Ron Lawrence, Big Jazz, Buck Wild, Derek D. Angeletti, shout out to the Mad Rapper, Anthony Dent, Nasheem Myrick, Tone and Polk, the legendary Tone and Polk. Teddy Riley actually produced a track from this album. Ski, Stevie J, long before he was a reality, I guess you would call him a reality star. David Prestige Vanderpool, and of course Sean P. Diddy. Y'all can call him P. Diddy. I call him Puffy Combs. So he had some heavy hitters as far as producers. Oh, and how can I forget the legendary, one of the all-time greats, DJ Premier is back on this album as well. So, so he had some heavy hitters. There's no reason why you would think, if you look at that lineup of people, that this album would not be great. So production wise, I'm just kind of running you through how this thing worked. When you looked at the track listing, you're like, okay, Jay-Z's back. He's got these heavy hitters as far as this production team. This album is going to be a smash, right? Depends on who you ask. So let's jump into the tracks. This album starts off with the intro / A Million and One Questions, Rhyme No More, produced by Premier. Crazy beat. Jay-Z really starts this album off the right way. I mean, just spitting bars. And he really comes hard at it. And, it's a typical 90s intro, if you will, to your album. Then the second track, The City Is Mine, featuring Blackstreet, R&B group Blackstreet. Obviously, this is produced by Teddy Riley, who at the time was a member of Blackstreet. This one was, I guess, a little different because this was a real good shot at radio, if you will. And I'll get into the fanfare as far as how people reacted to some of these songs in just a second. So you come back with that, which was that was a Glenn Frey song, if I'm not mistaken. You Belong to the City. That's what they sampled it from. A lot of samples on this album as well. Then you go to track 3. I Know What Girls Like, which was another sample. Produced by Puffy. Lil' Kim was on this joint as well. I didn't like this song at all. In fact, I hate this song. I really hate this song with a passion. This song is trash. Nonetheless, it's track number 3. Then you kind of bring it back. They slow it down. Imaginary Player, produced by Prestige. This joint is so sweet. One of my favorite tracks on the album. The dope part at the end. What's the difference between a 4.0 and a 4.6? That's my joint. One of the favorite tracks on the album, obviously another sample from Angela and Renee. Yeah, I love this. I love this track. Then you go to track 5. You got Streets is Watching. Ski laced the beat. Jay-Z is back on his rapidy raps, if you will. And I think this is what this song in particular, if you're listening to the album, by this time, this song makes it feel like Reasonable Doubt. Like, so it's street rhymes and it's, a gritty, grimy beat, and Jay-Z is, rapping his ass off. Then you go to track 6, Premier's back with Friend or Foe 98. Another hard banger. The only knock on this song is that the song is only 2 minutes long. So, but Jay-Z, telling stories, and it's a dope song. I love it. Then you go to track 7, Lucky Me. This was produced by Stevie J and Buck Wild. I actually love this song. You have a young lady singing on the hook. What she's singing is, you only know what you see. You don't understand what it takes to be me. And in this song, Jay-Z's very introspective. He's talking about dealing with the price of fame, if you will, and dealing with his celebrity. And I think this is a song that you really get a chance to see how Jay-Z dealt with his rise, I guess, if you will, and his success from Reasonable Doubt. He went from someone who could not secure a record deal to someone who is, watched and checked out, and people were like hanging on his every word. And he's a star, if you will. And again, this is in the pre-internet era where, becoming a star wasn't necessarily easy to do. It wasn't about how many Instagram followers you had, but I digress. So yeah, man, Lucky Me is a song that I really love because, again, it gives you the introspective side of Jay-Z. And I'll get back to that in just a second. Then we go to track 8. Always Be My Sunshine, Babyface and Foxy Brown on the track. This song, and Always Be My Sunshine, is produced by Prestige. And of course the sample Babyface track. This song is a lot, I guess, if you ask a lot of people, when they talk about this album, they always point to this song. And they talk about the video. And, for someone who was as, hardcore, if you will, or grimy as Jay-Z was on Reasonable Doubt, even his most radio-friendly track, was Ain't No Nigga. Had the word nigga in it. So it wasn't like, it wasn't like it was that, you had to have an edit for it. But even on Reasonable Doubt, it didn't feel like Jay-Z was reaching for the charts. This track here showed that he was clearly reaching for the charts, and he was, by the time the video dropped, it looked like he was trying to get in on the Bad Boy Shiny Suit era run, if you will. The video, produced by Hype Williams, featured all of these colors. And, if you haven't seen a video or haven't seen it in a while, when you finish listening to the podcast, go to YouTube and pull it up. It's a very colorful video, if you will. I'll say this, and I think this is one thing that people forget about this song, is that in 97, 98, people loved this song until they saw the video. I won't say everybody. A lot of people loved this song until they saw the video. The video actually killed it for the song. And I think that's one thing that gets lost when you talk about this album, is that people really were checking for this song. Or at least, let me rephrase that. A lot of people that I know and people that I've talked to were checking for this song until the video dropped. But the video publicly actually killed it for the song, because the video did not help at all. So then you move to track 9, Who You With, which was featured on the Sprung soundtrack as well. Produced by Ski. Dope joint. Jay-Z again, and this one had a video for it, and along with the pimp theme, was very, very cool, very cold. I like it. Another favorite track on the album. Then you go to track 10, Face Off, featuring Sauce Money, produced by Tone and Poke. I love this one, man. I'm still really not sure how or why Sauce Money never ended up on Rockefeller. Maybe somebody could tell me. But yeah, man, Sauce Money. I think Sauce Money and Jay-Z going back and forth just like they did on Reasonable Doubt. It was really, really great to see him on it. So even when you went from track 8 to the kind of smoothing it out, kind of R&B type sound, you're back to this quote unquote Reasonable Doubt sound I think the fans wanted with Sauce Money. Then you bring in Too Short for track 11, Real Niggas. And I think this song was a good song, and it was very key because not only was it Jay-Z and Too Short, but it was also kind of bridging the gap as far as East and West. By that time, we had already heard and known about this so-called quote unquote East Coast West Coast beef, if you will. And it was, I thought it was a good look to bring Too Short and Jay-Z and kind of show people that, hey, we're not beefing with them, they're not beefing with us, it's all good, so forth and so on. Then we go to track 12, Rap Game / Crack Game. I love this track, man. The sample was really, really dope. It was produced by Jazz, which was crazy in and of itself because we know that Jazz and Jay-Z fell out. And Jazz was the one that put Jay-Z on. But they used the Nas sample and the Outkast sample. But Jay-Z, man, bars. He gives you bars in this one. Then you go to track 13, Where I'm From. Now for me, this is my favorite track on the album. I think it's the best track on the album. This is just in my personal top 5 Jay-Z songs. Not saying that this is just my favorite Jay-Z songs. This is in the top 5. Where I'm From, man, it goes so hard. Produced by Derek D. Angeletti, and Ron Lawrence. Man, I love this joint, man. The video was cold. Jay-Z, I mean, he spit the line, who's the best MC, Biggie, Jay-Z, or Nas? And I mean, that, eventually would start the beef with he and Nas. But yeah, man, go listen to that track. That track is so cold, man. I never get tired of listening to it again. It's my favorite track on the album. And then the track closes with You Must Love Me. A song produced by Myrick. So on this one, You Must Love Me. Nasheem Myrick, I'm sorry, produced it. You Must Love Me is a song I think that is, and I think if I'm not mistaken, it's Kelly Price on the hook. Very, very introspective. Jay-Z talks about his life. He talks about things that happened to him growing up. He gives you a story about, a girlfriend who, he needed to make a run out of town to deliver some drugs, and he couldn't do it. And his girlfriend volunteered to go, and she strapped the drugs to her body. I mean, it is a very, very deep song, very personal. In the song, he talks about the incident that he had where he shot his older brother in the shoulder. Because his older brother, he had words with his older brother, and and to this day we have not heard Jay-Z talk publicly about that song or that incident. In fact, I've even heard him in interviews when it was brought up. I've actually heard Jay-Z decline to comment on the song. So yeah. But yeah, it's a very introspective song. And the thing that I love about this song, as well as You Must Love Me, is that on both songs, Jay-Z gives you a very introspective Jay-Z, and it's how he thinks and his he opens up, if you will. And I don't think we got a chance to see that side on a lot of his records, which really kind of bugged me out when I heard people talk about the 444 album. They talk about how introspective he was, as if Jay-Z had never been introspective on any of his songs. Well, this is his second album, and he really, really goes deep in You Must Love Me and Lucky Me. And I think if you're a fan of Jay-Z, you remember those songs. So when people made those, statements about the 444 album, you're like, huh? What? What do you mean? So nonetheless, man, track wise, it was really, really dope. I tell you what, let's take a quick commercial. We'll hear from Jay-Z. And on the other side, I'll tell you why you should or shouldn't like this album. Sit tight. We'll be back in a second.
So it took a while, but when I really started getting serious, my first album came out in '96. Then it was like, and I had to put the album out myself. Nobody would sign me. They thought I was terrible. Every single record, I went to every single record label. They was like, this guy's terrible. He's nothing. That just goes to show you how far the A&R was off. Like, it was these guys, and they used to go to Bentleys and had electric blue shirts on, and how you know about hip hop, and what do you know about? What are you talking about? Yeah, the egg and the nest and the whole everything just wasn't representative of hip hop. So
you put out your own album.
Yep. I mean, like, it went from singles. Like, I would press up singles, put it in the car. I had to go to the record company. Go to the record stores myself, and here, take this. Come back, get $100, $200. Give them some more records. It really started like that. Like,
wow.
But it made me appreciate it so much more. No one gave me anything. They didn't give me a record deal. They didn't give me anything. Like, I really just took my time and grew it step by step by step by step.
And just like that, we are back. As I mentioned at the top, we're talking about Jay-Z's second album, In My Lifetime, Volume 1. This album turns 20. We're breaking it down here on the 12 Kyle podcast. Of course, I'm your boy 12 Kyle. As I mentioned before the break, I told you, I tell you whether or not you should or shouldn't like this album. This album really, if you ask Jay-Z fans, a cross-section of Jay-Z fans, you'll hear a lot of people say that they don't like this album. And I actually understand why they don't like this album. For a lot of them, this album came, as a surprise, but this album fell short of expectations because of, it followed Reasonable Doubt. Let's just keep it 100. It's hard to follow Reasonable Doubt. But again, Reasonable Doubt was not heralded as and widely loved and accepted as it is now, as it was in 1997. So, you have to kind of take that with a caveat. But one of the reasons why people don't like this album is that when we got wind that the album was dropping, the first single that was released was the aforementioned Always Be My Sunshine. That's your first single. So it looked like they were really, really trying to go for the charts. And then the video dropped. And as I mentioned, I think really when the video dropped, that kind of killed it. And then you come back, the second single that was released was The City Is Mine. Teddy Riley produced City Is Mine, which had a pretty cool video with the Kaiser Sose Usual Suspects theme in it. Check that video out too. And then I think the third single that was released was Who You With. So, they didn't really, on this album, they didn't really have, the signature, the songs that were pushed, if you will, weren't the signature, boom bap or, Jay-Z on his rapidy rap shit, So I understand why, people, fans in particular, didn't particularly care for this album. I also understand too that, it's hard to follow up Reasonable Doubt. I think that's the biggest thing that people don't really understand is that Reasonable Doubt is hard to follow. And I remember hearing Jay-Z in an interview many years ago say that, this was his worst album. He said that, and I'm paraphrasing here, this was his worst album. He was coming off the big dying. And he said he felt like he rushed the album. I will beg to differ with Jay-Z because subsequently Jay-Z would release some really trashy albums. And he has. And if you haven't checked out, I did a podcast on where I ranked Jay-Z, I ranked Jay-Z's discography. And, to be honest, this particular album is ranked very high. In fact, it's ranked higher than most people will rank this album. So I understand why people didn't like this album. I'm here to tell you that I think you should like this album. This album, with the exception of a couple of songs, is a cold ass album. As I mentioned at the top, I Know What Girls Like, skip. I hate that song. That song is awful. I mean, I don't know what they were trying to do. I don't know. And Puff produced it, so that makes it even worse. But Puff and Lil' Kim on it, man, it's just, the song is trash. Like, I'll never listen to that song again. When I listen to this album, I always skip that song. I can understand why people necessarily didn't warm up to The City Is Mine. That song is cool for me, but I know some people that don't like it. And then Always Be My Sunshine, of course, again, it's really not what's happening. It was a reach, and I'm pretty sure Jay and Babyface will admit that it's a reach. But other than those two songs, and I'm not even going to include City Is Mine. I'm going to say City Is Mine probably, it's a push. But other than Sunshine and, I Know What Girls Like, this is a cold ass album. This album flows. This album is dope. It's got lyrics. It's got beats. It's got introspection. It's got storytelling. It's got bars. It's got everything that you want. This album, like I said, the downside to this album is that it followed up Reasonable Doubt. If this album had come out first and Reasonable Doubt was Jay-Z's second album, people would feel a lot different about it. And I understand and I get it why people don't like this album, or some people don't like. I can't say all. Some people don't like this album. When I did my my ranking of the discography, I had this album at 6 of all time as far as Jay-Z's albums. So I feel very highly about this album. I absolutely love this album. I play it all the time. It never gets old, man. I would love to see going forward. Obviously, if Jay-Z continues to rhyme, I would like to see him hook back up with Primo even more because, we got a couple of tracks from Primo on this one. And then subsequently on Jay-Z's, subsequent albums, his work with Primo, declined. Same with Ski. And I think, those are guys who actually, brought some magic out of Jay-Z. For whatever reason, I don't know why they're not, working and collaborating anymore. But this is a cold ass album, man. You go back and look at the what the critics say. Again, I mentioned 4.5 mics in the Source. USA Today gave it 4 stars. A lot of musical publications love this album. Fans, if you go back to 1997, fans for the most part like this album. I thought it was a dope ass album. Again, 2 songs, maybe 3 songs you could remove. But again, a cold ass album, man. If I had to give it mics, giving it a 4. I'm giving it a 4. 4 mics for this album. This is a dope ass album. If you haven't listened to it, take a listen and, tell me what you think. Make sure that you leave a comment on SoundCloud or Stitcher. I don't think you can leave a comment on Apple Podcasts. But yeah, man, there it is. Jay-Z's second album in my lifetime, Volume 1. Thank you for listening, downloading, and subscribing to the latest 12 Kyle podcast. I'm 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000.
Shout out to my man Don P from Long Island.
No more reasonable doubt, I'm proving to be the illest MC. Something's wrong with your motor skills, cause y'all ain't moving me. I'm who you see musically when you want it done high. Comparing you to me is a lesson in futility style. I paint pictures beautifully, but niggas is nearsighted. Don't worry about plagiarists, it'll take them years to bite it. With your greatest fears, I don't write it, it just appears. Out of nowhere, like the information obtained by psychic. Like it or not, I pay dues and expect to be paid back. Why the fuck should I freestyle? I'm getting paid to rap. I slay the track laid back, almost till it's a sin. Tell your God somebody's doing a good job impersonating him. Jehovah, spitting game from the Range Rover. The up y'all doing in third lane. Get over, slow your road up. I got it sold up like a teller. Relatively easy, like Jerry Heller. Cream is cherry vanilla. Got chicks in the telly, belly up, sounding like Mahalia. Trying to tell y'all know the style. Burn the town down and change the locale. I'm doing the same shit, except it's